Claire, we saw the federal parliament pass legislation last week banning social media for children under 16 years old. What have parents been saying to you following that new law being passed?
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. It's interesting because I'm already actually seeing the impact of this law already. So most parents I talk to are pretty happy about this. They're feeling empowered. They're feeling like they can say no. I mean, I've always said that that was the answer anyway, right? This problem could have been solved tomorrow if parents banded together. We didn't actually need the government, but anyway, that wasn't happening. I'm already seeing, obviously, if you've got a kid who's 11, 12 years old, they're heading off to high school next year, parents are now saying, no, you can't have social media because, you know, it's going to be banned in 12 months' time anyway. And so they're going to have the fight of their lives if they give it to them for 12 months and then try to remove it. So most parents I'm talking with are pretty happy about this. I know that, you know, I was not always on board as a supporter of this. I don't condone government telling us how to parent, but at the end of the day, I'm seeing kids every day. This is literally killing our kids, and the mental health effects, I think, outweigh any ridiculous argument, particularly disappointingly by mental health groups saying that social media is a place where kids can come together and it protects some aspects of their mental health. I just don't buy into that argument at all.
And do you think that in a broader sense, if kids aren't going to be on social media, they can be out doing other things? Like, I know that we have a lot of online interaction, but what of the, you know, good old-fashioned kids playing with each other in person?
Yeah, so obviously one of the arguments, you know, that's talked about a lot against social media is what they're seeing online. But actually, I've spoken for nearly a decade now. I think the biggest impact of social media is what they're not doing. So if I look at a kid's screen usage, you know, it's 6-7 hours a day. And so we have to ask, what was the previous generation doing with that 6 or 7 hours? And you're right, they were socialising, they were talking to each other, they were sleeping. You know, kids don't sleep these days. They were having dinners with their family. They were out exercising. So for me, it's not just about the predatory behaviour and the junk on social media. It's about the complete addiction of looking into a little black box and not doing all these other things, which are really important for development. So you're right, we might actually just get back to some socialisation without arguing that they have to connect somehow online. And schools have already proven that, right? So the school ban has been the best thing that the New South Wales government brought in. And kids have moved from staring into their screens on the playground to talking to each other. So that's just proven that's been a massively positive move.
Yeah, I think so. I tend to agree with that. And still on schools, and it appears old is new again, and the 2024 NAPLAN results have improved significantly with the recent return of the old school, the direct instruction teaching, which no doubt you and I both had. But can you explain to us why children learn better this way?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of parents and certainly grandparents who are hearing this news actually might think, I had no idea that classrooms were not done in this way. You know, we're talking about old school stuff, but it's actually just really common sense. So these days, the last at least generation have had a massive educational experiment on them and a move away from the teacher teaching. And we've gone to this student-led teaching approach where it's collaborative and they have to discover the answers themselves in groups. And, you know, we need to go back to explicit teaching, rote learning. We know developmentally and cognitively, that's actually how the brain learns. It learns by breaking things down into chunks. It learns from modelling from an authority figure. It learns from structure. And so we've got a couple of schools now that have returned to this, and surprise, surprise, the NAPLAN results are, you know, outstanding and better than they've ever been. So this experimentation, and that's all I can call it, because what was working in kind of the early 90s changed by the mid 90s, and this is a case of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we need to get back to that teacher-led explicit instruction, learning your times tables, regular testing, like your spelling test on a Friday. That's the type of teaching we need to get back to, because the evidence is really clear that that's what produces the academic results.
And I can never understand why they stuff around with things which work. There's plenty of things in and around education that don't work. Why don't the bureaucrats focus on those problems rather than stuffing around with the things that do work and making it all worse? But there was also this week a really interesting report by the ABC which suggests that intervention as early as preschool can help reduce youth crime. Now, what kind of intervention are they speaking of, and why is it so helpful?
Yeah, well, this was interesting, and this study looks at getting in there and closing the gap for some particularly, disadvantaged children. And we know that if we can get in and have a multi-pronged attack on things like their communication and verbal skills, this study also worked with parents at home on behavioural management and supporting families. So we're trying to close the gap on, low socioeconomic kids and disadvantaged kids. Then absolutely, the trajectory for those kids is going to be really much better and steer them away 10 years later from juvenile crime. So this is a really confirming study to what psychologists have said for a long time, that early intervention makes the world of difference. I would just say, though, as well, I think we need to have a real good balance between, these wonderful programs at a preschool age, but then also investment into families to help them keep kids at home if that's what they want to do, and not be forced into full-time preschool or daycare due to economic pressures. So it's that balance that we need between the two, fostering healthy attachment at home and also these more structured government-led programs.
And I think you end up with much more rounded children the earlier that you can start working on these sorts of things, particularly if there's any sort of issues, much better than trying to deal with late stage problems. Thank you so much, Claire Rowe.